Hello Michael, I'm Joe. I attended the June Academy and Flagstaff field study earlier this year. I've since been back in England for a few months working a new role as a facilities contract manager. Since returning and describing my experience to others, it has led me to a concept for my independent study proposal. A seminar and learning experience in which I sell the concept of EarthShips by building an understanding of their principles before they know, or more importantly, see what one looks like. So, what is my premise? Well, when an average person sees a picture of an Earthship, they make assumptions. They think of hippies, alternative lifestyles, and lack of modern comforts. My aim is to strip the initial shock factor of seeing an Earthship for the first time, with no talk of Star Wars homes, hobbit houses, or the desolation of the desert. I want people to see the structure being built in their mind from a practical perspective and understand the principles of building a home with energy usage in mind from the ground up, and feel they want the benefit of what's on offer before they know what they're looking at. So, we start with a cave and a primitive man inside compared to a house with a modern woman living inside. The woman is in a very common situation of not being able to afford her heating bills, therefore cannot afford the luxury of living on the grid. Her home is cold in the winter and too hot in the summer. It becomes apparent quite quickly that the primitive man is better off due to the nature of his home. It is naturally warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. With this approach and easy to grasp comparison, we reset the viewer's mindset when looking at solutions to making structures habitable. The audience are quite struck that a cave is arguably better suited to offsetting energy input than their own home and are intrigued why the cave works better. We then take the thermal mass of the cave and begin to add to it to form a structure, explaining the enhancement of constant ground temperature twinned with solar gain to build a solar passive house. A comfortable temperature year through without the need for modern infrastructure. Once this utopian theory of this home is alive in the audience's mind, I reveal these homes already exist and show pictures of a finished encounter model, my personal favourite, from inside with luxury Airbnb vibes, a kitchen full of light and open plan living spaces with all the mod cons of a normal home. The first picture shown from outside the Earthship is surrounded by grass. It could be anywhere in the world. People's minds are now open to having a functioning autonomous home made from repurposed materials that looks like £1 million house. This way their introduction to Earthship is one of understanding and a luxury end product. No talk of trash. Most people don't want to buy trash. No talk of tyres or pictures of pounding in the desert heat. If we want to roll these out like Model Ts, we need to start selling them like Model Ts. The potential car owner's brochure shows it polished, sleek and performing rather than what is literally under the hood. The current campaign has recruited your garbage warriors such as myself, but we need to recruit and sell it to the average sustainably minded person. So, welcome to my seminar. And now, imagine if you can, you'd never heard of an Earthship. Primitive man. This is a cave. A normal image to conjure when thinking of a primitive man. But what did the cave have to offer? Well, firstly it was shelter from the rain. We have basic structures that can offer that, a shed for argument's sake. Primitive man can also heat the cave to keep out the cold. A fire does the trick, and the walls of the cave offer insulation to ensure the cold does not escape. Primitive man goes as far to put a thatched door over the cave, and we can now call this a dwelling. We also heat our dwellings, but rather than use primitive techniques such as lighting fires, we have central heating. A natural gas in huge global abundance is piped to your property through infrastructure which is buried under the roads until it reaches your boiler. I don't have to tell you that then we burn that gas to heat water and it is then pumped through your radiators, eventually delivered to you through convection. We've come to view this infrastructure as integral to our lives. Without it, we would be without warmth and shelter. But what happens when the gas to your home becomes too expensive to be viable? I noticed this myself whilst on a Teams meeting to a colleague. Becky, in her mid-30s, was wrapped up in blankets and jumpers. My initial question was, "Is your boiler broken?" But no, she replied. She said she cannot afford to put the heating on and would rather suffer the cold in her own home to put money towards more essential things such as feeding her son and saving for Christmas. It was at this point I realised that humanity had failed. For a working class person had been priced out of a human essential. Let us head back to primitive man now. He's sitting quite smugly with a roaring fire. Wood is primitive man's abundant natural resource, but he will not need to consider not being able to afford it for a few hundred years, since no one has gathered all the wood reserves and kindly offered him a convenient infrastructure to distribute it to him at a cost. It does not seem at a first glance, but the cave is superior to the house in other ways. The cave has the benefit of thermal mass surrounding it, meaning it can use the constant ground temperature to regulate its living space temperature with little need for additional input. The cave is a steady 16 degrees whilst the outside air is a chilly 1 degree, meaning primitive man only needs to heat his space by 4 degrees to achieve a comfortable temperature. In modern terms, we call this offsetting energy usage, allowing a better suited resource to do the hard work before letting something greener take over. A hybrid car, for example, allowing the torque of a diesel engine to overcome the difficult inertia before letting an electric motor take the high-range gears. A ground source heat pump is another example. A modern home has no temperature offset. The living space indoors will equalise close to outside air temperature with no heating. So as you can see, the inside of the home is 5 degrees when outside is 1, meaning we need to add 15 degrees to make it comfortable. In the summer, it will also rise above and exceed outside air temperature without mechanical ventilation. On the domestic market, air conditioning is considered a luxury, yet it's becoming more common in new homes due to regulations on loft insulation, meaning upstairs living spaces can become stifling when outside temperatures reach 30 degrees. With solar gain, we are forced to open windows and switch on fans to encourage a draft and lower temperatures. Remember this heated loft space for later in our journey. The cave in the summer, however, is a comfortable 21 degrees indoors. Why? Well, let's revisit the cave and add some modern understanding of natural processes whilst keeping its thermal mass properties it naturally possesses. We open up the cave to form a U-shaped retaining wall with an earth berm surrounding it. The front of the U is south facing, meaning it can benefit from solar gain all year. Let's add a glass fascia, which we will refer to as the greenhouse. When the sun is high in the sky during the middle of summer, the solar gain is low, highly concentrated on the front windows without warming the interior. When the sun is low in the sky during the winter, the windows allow the sun's rays to penetrate the glass at a shallow angle, charging the berm with radiated heat. The berm is our temperature offset. It regulates the living space. The sun is our heat source. It tops up the berm when the berm requires it in the depths of winter. It naturally enters when it is needed. We do not need to invite it in or start a fire or even do a sundance. We've now created a comfortable living space year round, a 19-degree space all year, naturally. Let's add some air conditioning. We run a cooling tube through the berm and into the lower portion of the thermal mass. The greenhouse roof is higher than the ceiling of the living area, meaning hot air rises into the pitch of the roof, relieving the space of its temperature gain. Remember our loft space from earlier? Now, if we add a transom window into the roof pitch to release this hot air, it pulls a vacuum as the air escapes and allows natural convection to pull cool, fresh air through the berm and into the living space. This is cool, fresh air moving through your space with no need for mechanical input. This living space is now a comfortable temperature year round, much more comfortable than a modern home, and with the opening and closing of some hatches and transoms, it is a fully air-conditioned environment. The breeze through a modern home isn't cooled, and the cool air from your modern AC unit isn't fresh, it's recirculated. This is cool, fresh air for free. So, is this where we stop? No. We need some other essentials to call this a home. Primitive man needs somewhere to go to the toilet. Let's add a septic tank, a rudimentary setup with a 2-chambered tank. If you've never looked up a video on how a septic tank works, I highly recommend it. It's very interesting. In basic terms, black wastewater goes in and liquid fertiliser comes out. We can use this fertiliser to feed a garden, growing fresh food and eventually feeding our man again. We need drinking water. Rain falls freely from the sky, so let's harvest it and bury some water tanks into the berm to use them to collect rainwater from the roof. The water is then stored at a reasonable temperature and insulated from solar gain during the summer, unlike your water in the loft. Some basic filtration then allows us to drink this water safely. In this country, and many others, you flush the toilet with drinking water. Let's take a moment to consider just how wasteful that is. In this dwelling, however, we harvest the water. Instead of wasting drinking water, we instead reuse it from the showers, rich with electrolytes and dead skin cells to feed an indoor planter. Once we've fed the planter, we could then use the grey water to flush the toilet. We have a clear definition and usage for drinking water, grey water and black water. With all these points addressed, we're no longer looking at an air-conditioned cave. We're looking at a fully autonomous off-grid home, capable of sustaining human and plant life in equilibrium. If we add a few solar panels to this, until now arguably primitive home, we can meet all of the needs of human daily existence. Food, water, shelter, sewage treatment, electricity, heating and cooling. These structures already exist, and they're called EarthShips. I had the pleasure of working on them in the summer of 2024 in New Mexico and Arizona. Using repurposed tyres to build thermal mass walls, Michael Reynolds and his team are teaching the world the ways of off-grid living, a life with no bills, a life closer to nature, and a celebration of embracing the Earth's natural phenomenon and harnessing its energy through design from the ground up. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for listening, Michael. If you approve of this approach to teaching EarthShips, I would love to host some of these seminars in 2025. I hope you and the guys are well, and I look forward to hearing from you.